Welcome to the MIT IT Innovation Program podcast. This is a repository of insights by thought leaders and practitioners of innovation where they speak about their views, insights, and experiences. Come join us.
He founded 3 companies from 1990 to 2005 in the domain of productivity enhancement technologies for manufacturing. He exited all his companies in 2005 and took a year off to learn the science of yoga. He holds a PhD in corporate innovation and design thinking. Currently, Dr. Kaustubh consults larger corporates on how to enhance their innovation quotient. His views on innovation and strategy are sought by publications such as Knowledge at Wharton, Springer, E&T-Europe, etc. Dr. Kaustubh has been recognized as the top 7 global innovators at the Smart City Congress Barcelona for his paper titled A Collaborative Business Model for Reducing the Real Carbon Footprint of Electric Vehicles. He has been a runner-up at the Wharton School's prestigious Global Innovation Tournament. He has 2 TEDx talks to his credit. He has trained more than 5,000 individuals over 50,000 plus hours of training in the space of design thinking, creative problem solving, breakthrough ideation, and concept creation. A teacher at heart, Dr. Kaustubh is a visiting faculty at leading universities. He is a mentor at various startup incubators and has mentored more than 150 plus startups over the last decade, helping them scale by building robust business models. He is the recipient of the Entrepreneurship Educator and Mentor Award by the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship by the Government of India, jointly with Intel, British Council, EDII, and NEN. He has also been featured as a changemaker on the Dr. Subhash Chandra Show business. He is a keen yoga enthusiast. His article on Pratyahara and the creative thinking of Nobel laureates has been published in the University, a compendium of 75 influential minds in the field of yoga. So before we proceed to listen to Dr. Kaustubh, I have a few updates to share about the session and the MIT ID Innovation Program webinar platform. For those who are joining us for the first time today, I'd like to inform you that MIT stands for the 4-decade-old Maharashtra Institute of Technology. ID stands for MIT's 15-year-old Pioneering Institute of Design. MIT ID's one-year innovation program focuses on the 4 pillars of design, business, technology, and humanities. The key differentiators of this one-year course are immersion, project-based learning, and humanities. So on behalf of Professor Harshit Desai, the head of the innovation program, and the core team, we are grateful to be amongst you all hosting this session today. Today's webinar will have our guest speaker share his insights for the first half hour, followed by questions facilitated by me in the latter half hour. Please do read the chat for other important pointers that have been shared. This is our 20th industry interaction this season, and I, Priya Dhawan, Head of Collaborations Outreach for the MIT ID Innovation Program, welcome you all once again to this thoughtfully curated innovation journey. Warm once again, Dr. Kaustubh, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, MIT ID program, for inviting me over for this talk. And thank you all for taking the time to attend this session. So basically, the talk is going to be about the logic, not magic, behind innovation. Many of us think of innovation as, some kind of a aha moment, something springing out from a mind which is suddenly connecting the dots, or something typically called as an epiphany. And there is this myth that innovation and creativity lie within the purview of the genius. I sincerely believe it is not so. Well, there are people who are gifted for sure, but there are people like you and me who can definitely acquire it as a skill rather than making it like sound as if it's an unexpected kind of an aha moment. So reality is that skills can be acquired, and that's going to be the whole entire gist of this talk of mine. And that's what the gist of that book also is, which has been published last month. So I'm going to tell you two personal stories. Then I'm going to kind of, from those stories, what are those takeaways? And then we will have a Q&A session. So that's going to be the flow of the session. So story number one, this is about 28 to 30 months old. That is about 2.5 years back. One company that I was doing some consulting with is a typical telecalling BPO. And they came in with a statement saying that we want to enhance the efficiencies of the various processes that we undertake in our organization. So my first question was, which is the most inefficient process that you have right now? So obviously they said that it's the calling process, because when these telecalling executives call us and they try to sell us some credit card or some automobile loan or some home loan or some products here and there, and even if we say no, they keep on repeatedly calling us. We make 10 calls, 20 calls, 15 calls to the same person, and it's a very inefficient process. So we started looking at that. And finally, right now I'm going to tell you only what came out as a result, and then we will analyze later on how it came. So, it took about 6 to 8 months, almost, 7.5 months or so, to create a system where, so that this is something that you've done. So, all right. Now, another story. This is 2013. I go as a visiting faculty to various B schools and take subjects related to new business model creation, new product development, entrepreneurship, etc. And one assignment which I give across all these courses, one common assignment is what I typically call as an empathy fortnight. So for a week, I divide the class into groups of 5. So suppose it's a class of 50, I divide them into 10 groups of 5 each. And each group is given one customer segment that they have to interact with for the next fortnight, identify some latent or unarticulated or unsolved problems that particular customer segment is facing, and then come up with some new products or some unique products or services basis that study. Now, one such group was given a target segment such as deaf and mute housewives. Deaf and mute housewives. All right. After the first 3-4 days, this group came back to me saying, we have thought of a lot of products and services, but we haven't really been able to come up with anything unique. I just sat down with them and said, you were not supposed to come up with any new product or service within the first 3-4 days. You had to interact with those people, that particular target segment, for 15 days, and then you had to think of something new basis what you found out. So these guys said, it is extremely difficult to find such people, and extremely difficult to interact with them because they can't speak and they can't hear. The target segment was deaf and mute housewives. Right? So, we just sat around a table, 5 of them and me, 1-6. And I said, how many people, how many families do you know in your closed social circle? Each one of us knows at least 40 to 50 families in our closed social circle. I said, let us write down the names of these families that we know well. So 6 of us listed down around 280 to 300 family names in our in our respective social circles. And then we went through each of those families with their family members, etc., and found 2 women who actually fit that bill, which means they were deaf, mute, and were housewives. That was specific. And then we said, let us go and visit these ladies. Let's go and spend some time with these ladies. And we spent about an hour and a half in one house and maybe another hour and a half to 2 hours in the other house. And we noticed very, very simple things like when the doorbell rings, this lady cannot respond. When she puts something in the microwave, and goes to another room after setting the time. After the timer times out, it keeps beeping. She cannot respond to that sound. She cannot come back and switch it off. Similar thing would happen with her with the pressure cooker. She would put something in the pressure cooker, and we noticed that she would not leave the kitchen to do something else in some other room, because she knew that if she went to another room and if the whistle blew off, the pressure cooker whistle, she would not be able to hear it, and she would not be able to come back and switch the gas off, the stove off, which meant the food might get overcooked. Now, these were very simple problems, but very typical problems that these kids found out. And they made this. This is the first prototype way back in 2013, which they had made. Within, I think, the next 15 days after that fortnight, they made this product. It's a simple wristband with a Bluetooth-enabled Bluetooth module embedded in the wristband, and a similar Bluetooth module embedded in all the home appliances in the house, so that when the doorbell would ring, the wristband would vibrate, and maybe a red LED would glow on this band. If the pressure cooker whistle went off, maybe after the third whistle it was programmed to this wristband would vibrate, and maybe a green LED would glow on it. Similar with the microwave also, maybe a blue LED along with the microwave and a vibration in the wristband. Now, this is a very, very simple product that these guys created, but a very useful product. Nothing like this existed back then in 2013. This picture I'm showing is of the first prototype that they created. So don't look at the aesthetics. It got modified later on. So now, two of these group of 5 people got very excited about doing something like a venture around it. They wanted to do a startup around this, and they came to me saying, we want to take this idea forward in the form of a venture. So I said, think about it, research a little bit about it for the next, say, 3 weeks or so, and come back with some kind of a roadmap, or analyze the entire ecosystem and come back to me with some kind of a plan, how you intend to take it forward. These kids came to me after 5 weeks, quite dejected, saying that, sir, for manufacturing in India, we need something like 19 licenses, and it takes anything between 14 to 15 months to get those licenses. That was the first kind of depressing factor that they had encountered. Second that they had encountered was that they had realized that this product is so damn simple. There is hardly any technology involved in it. And it is so simple that maybe we'll be able to sell maybe 500 to 1,000 pieces in Mumbai, Pune, and Nasik, etc., in the surroundings. But within 3 to 4 months, the Chinese will come in with a much, much cheaper product. And they will come in with millions of pieces, and we'll be nowhere in the market. Now, these were 2 big constraints that prevented them from really going to the market. But they didn't give up. After 2.5 to 3 months, what they did was a master stroke. They said the need for the product exists in the market, but manufacturing the product is not a fault of the market, but it is our problem on our side. So how do we overcome it? Kept on thinking, and about 3 months later, they came up with an idea that forget the manufacturing. We will not manufacture this product at all. We will create a cloud platform. We will make this wristband completely open source. Anybody can manufacture this wristband, provided there is a Bluetooth module embedded in it. That is to be included by the wristband manufacturer. And then they went to the appliance manufacturers like LG and Siemens and Samsung and Whirlpool, and made them a proposition saying that if you want to call your products deaf and mute friendly, we will give you an API from our cloud platform, which will enable your electronics to communicate with the wristband anywhere in the world. So now, from being a pure play product company, they became a completely software based platform, and their product moved from being a wristband to an API. I hope everybody understands what an API is: application programming interface, right? So now the whole beauty of this business model, so to say, was that they were completely free from manufacturing, which was their pain to begin with. And very importantly, the consumer appliance manufacturers actually became their marketeers, so to say. They themselves did not have to go and sell a wristband, but the appliance manufacturers who had an interest in calling their products deaf and mute friendly were the ones doing the marketing for them. Now, one more question. I'm going to take a pause here. This shift in business model, the product is very simple. It is easy to copy. Nobody can kind of compete with the Chinese when it comes to manufacturing. How these people tweak this whole business model? Once again, give your opinion in the chat window. Was it a good, innovative move by these people or not? Yes or no? Just a response, yes or no. Oh, I'm seeing everybody saying yes. There is not a single no there. All right. Okay. All right. Now, one person is saying no. All right. Okay. Any more coming? All right. Once again, I see almost 20, 21 yeses and one no. All right. So most of you think this is innovative. Now, I've told you two stories. Which most of you think are innovative products or services? 21 out of 25 was the first example. And here it is, I think, 21 out of 22. Or one more came in. So I think it must be, what is it? The last one is yes. Okay. Though the competition could be deterrent. All right. So 22 out of 23 say yes for the second one. And for the first one, 21 out of 25 say yes. All right. So almost everybody says that these are innovative products and services. Now let us look at the how behind these creations. I'm going to stop in a while. In the first story, let me tell you how this whole thing came about. Now, we began with a 2-day kind of a workshop with that telecalling BPO. First, they had said that only senior management will participate in that entire workshop. I insisted, no, if it is a whole process that has to be managed, then it is to be the entire project team that needs to participate. And after a little 3-4 back and forths, they agreed that their entire team will participate. And a team of 21 people, right from the senior VP to the general manager, to the solution architect, to the techie, to the last people who actually pick up the receiver and call, that is the telecalling executives. 2 telecalling executives are also included in that whole team. And we began this workshop. And for the first 1.5 to 2 hours, we began at maybe 9:30. And till 11 o'clock, till the first coffee break, we were talking about, I was trying to understand how this operates and things like that, and what they have done so far to enhance the efficiencies and things like that. And I had noticed that these 2 telecallers had not opened their mouth at all. in that entire 1.5 hours of discussion. So in the first coffee break, I made it a point to go and sit with these two people and, talk to them, generally prompt them to speak a little bit. And after a little bit of cajoling, one of them said that all these discussions in the first 1.5 hours that have happened are fine. There's a lot of jargon thrown around, a lot of statistical techniques. People are talking about this, that, etc. He made $1 million statement. He said, when I pick up the receiver and talk to a prospect, in the first 5 to 6 sentences that the prospect utters, I kind of get to from the voice tone of that prospect, I kind of get to know whether this call is going to be fruitful, not fruitful, etc. He has a subjective judgment about the whole thing. That appealed to me a lot. And when we restarted after the coffee break, I made that person narrate what he told me outside in the cafeteria. Very speaking in front of senior management, this guy opened up and repeated what he had told me outside. And instantly, almost the 15 people in the crowd, in that group, pounced on the three of us, that means me, the two telecallers, saying that, giving us numbers, saying we have 3,500 telecallers. If we were to take into account the subjective judgment of these people, we will have to look at 3,500 into 50, which is 175,000 subjective judgments every 75,000 data points. It's just impossible, not happening. But we kept on talking about it. And credit to them also that they were open to exploring that whole thing. They didn't nip it in the bud. We continued to techies in the project team. He said that voice tone is basically a sound wave, and a sound wave has amplitude, has wavelength, and has frequency. And all these three are perfectly measurable. Now that's basic 7th standard or 8th standard physics, right? Sound waves. Now there was a challenge of how do you quantify this voice tone in terms of these 3 parameters. So the simplest thing that needs to be looked at is we need to check out patterns. And for patterns, we need some previous data. So the question was, do you have old call logs which are recorded? Remember, every time these people call us, the message which comes in before the call center executive comes online, that this call may be recorded for training and quality purposes, which means they record certain number of calls. Then when I asked them, do you have call logs recorded? In about 10-15 minutes, somebody went and found the number. They had 45 lakh call logs recorded over the previous 10 years of their operations in India. 45 lakh call logs is a large database. Then my next question was, are the outcomes of these 45 lakh calls also documented? They said, yes, we've documented, which means this call got converted after 10 calls. This one took 12. This prospect took 12 calls to get converted. This one did not, etc., etc., etc. So now it was just a simple problem of matching the voice tone with the outcome. Now, they did not have an in-house technology of speech recognition technology to be able to kind of distinguish the voice patterns. So we looked around, and from one of these technology business incubators, we found one startup doing some cool stuff in speech recognition technology. And they got together, and over the next 7 to 8 months, that startup, in collaboration with this company, they created a voice engine, an algorithm, which recognizes the voice tone, based on the outcomes of those 45 lakh call logs. That means they identified patterns in those 45 lakh call logs, that voice tone pattern A corresponded to an outright conversion of the prospect. Voice tone pattern B corresponded to a maybe yes. Voice tone pattern C, maybe yes, maybe no, fringe. Voice tone pattern D, maybe no. And voice tone pattern E, an outright no. Now, this is a self-learning algorithm. Today, I have checked with them about 3 months back. I was in touch with them. They have come to a level where the first 12 words that the prospect utters, the voice of the prospect is analyzed by the back-end voice engine and buckets or categorizes the prospect into one of these 5 categories: outright yes, maybe yes, yes, no, maybe, maybe no, and outright no. And depending on which category the prospect's voice tone falls in, the next conversation flow appears on the screen of the telecaller, thus simplifying the whole process and saving time, money, effort, everything. Now, where did this idea really come from? It did not come from the top. It came from people who are connected with that prospect at the last mile. So, how do you establish last mile user connect? That's the key to innovation. That's the logic behind innovation. This did not in the problem solving approach. It was that we did not ignore that last mile, the telecaller who is in direct contact with the prospect. The team did not ignore what came from there. And that's where that insight came from, and that's where the whole solution got built up. That's what I mean by last mile user connect. Even the wristband example, where did the basic idea for the product come from? Now, it came from the time that these people spent in the houses of those 2 ladies, just observing what was happening without really interfering. And to add to that, normally, initially we thought that we will go into those houses when there are people around so that they will be able to interpret what the deaf and mute ladies want to communicate, because we didn't know sign language and we wanted to be comfortable to understand what was going on in their minds. But the more we thought about it, we thought that when we go into those houses, when there are other people in the house, there will be help for those ladies to do their activities, which means their real problems will never come out. So we chose a time in the morning between 9:30 and 12 to visit those houses, for the simple reason that by 9:30 the husband has gone off to office and kids also have gone off to school, and this lady is busy with her cooking and her usual chores in the house, which means the time that she's alone and doing a lot of tasks is the time that her real issues are going to come. And in addition to this, we chose those days when her housemaid was absent, which means we chose an extreme situation where the user is being put into. And that's where the real problems kind of come out. And that's where your additional features in a product or a service, which actually round off the product or service, really come out when you start exploring the extremes. That's another simple logic that one can follow. And it gives stupendous results. Next point is visualizing use cases and then bringing in or consulting domain experts, technology experts, etc. Many a times the mistake that we do is we start consulting domain experts right in the beginning before really building the use case. And many times these domain experts, being the experts that they are, when they say, no, this is impossible to happen, we also tend to give up. But if keep the user first, technology later, or if the relevant tech experts at the right time when you want a problem to be solved. Many times we start with the technology in mind and then try to create a solution around it. Never to be done according to the actual use cases, define the use cases, identify various possibilities that the user might put the product or service to, and then to overcome those problems that are coming out from there, then you consult the domain experts, is what my point would be. So, and there are many other things. Right now, for shortage of time, I will stop here, and maybe we can take some questions and yeah.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
The audience can please text their questions in the chat mode, or of course, they can use the Q&A tab as well.
Yeah, there were some questions earlier as well, but if please, you can take whatever questions that you would want to have. Should I take it from the Q&A?
Yes, sir, you can go ahead. You can see the question there.
Have you observed design thinking going wrong? Well, design thinking is such a process that if done properly, can't go wrong. If it has gone wrong in some place, then it has not been deployed properly, I would say. Because simply put, what is design thinking? Design thinking is a highly user-centric, exploratory approach to problem solving, which means at all times, right from understanding the problem, defining the problem, to generating ideas, to trying it out as a prototype with people, testing it, etc. So if you are really following that in the true spirit, I don't think design thinking can go wrong if followed in the true spirit. That would be. Do you have some actual Richa Verma, some actual examples of something like this, or what is it? Do you want to cite some example where something went wrong or something like that? Okay, next question is there a time boxed way of making sure that design thinking works, a checklist? Of course, everything has to be time boxed. It can't go on forever and ever and ever and ever again. There have to be, so, identifying kind of broadly your constraints in the beginning is a good way to kind of create a checklist as we go along the process. And this checklist could expand or it could reduce also as you go along with this process. But yes, always, I mean, creativity always thrives under constraints. If you give a carte blanche to some person saying there is no constraint, I don't think that will be, the person will come up with anything creative. But if you have constraints, automatically, I think 100% I believe that creativity thrives under constraints. So yes, time boxing has to be there. Checklist according to the constraints that you have, the time limits that you have, the manpower that you probably will have, the budget that you will have. So it needs to be there for sure. Do you give any importance to intuition and intangible, illogical phenomenon, gut feeling in the process of innovation? Well, intuition also happens because you are thinking over it for a long, long time. Intuition may happen suddenly, but maybe 0.5% case or 1% case, but 99% of the time it is because you've been thinking about that problem from multiple perspectives. You've been really immersed in that, and then those kind of dots get connected in the head. But to be immersed in the problem, that's the big piece there, right? So just as a uh, saying that intuition plays a large role in innovation, no, I don't really believe that. And the book that it's logical. In fact, I have deliberately spoken about this entire point that innovation can be an acquired skill. It's not that you have to be born with it. Absolutely not.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Kaustubh. Sorry, I think there was a technical glitch and I dropped out and had to join back.
Okay.
I wanted to also check with you. You mentioned that you had founded 3 companies from 1990 onwards, and for almost 15 years, I guess a lot of money focus was spent on these 3 companies, and then to sort of exit, from.
So 3 made some money, 5 flopped big time.
Do you share something from that stage of your life? Because it's very interesting to know that again, you exited all 3 and then you took a year off to learn the science of yoga. So really keen to know that what was that kind of phase for you?
I started off in 1990, and we started with very simple presses, manufacturing of presses. Those hand-operated presses which can punch a hole or which can imprint your logo on a metallic sheet and things like that.
Right.
And gradually over the next 2 years, 91, 92, etc., I kind of realized that customers are not coming to me to buy a press. Customers are coming to me to enhance the productivity of their assembly lines. So
right.
That's the time we realized that we are not in the business of selling presses, but we are in the business of enhancing the productivity of our customers' assembly lines. And that's when we started thinking about how else can we add to the productivity of the assembly lines of our clients. Then we got into simple things like conveyor belts or these automatic indexing tables or pick and place units and XY motion control systems, etc. And at the beginning, I had absolutely no idea about that technology. We started by outsourcing. We used to assemble it, and gradually we built. It took us about to really understand those technologies and started manufacturing in-house. And by the end of the 10 years, our product portfolio is completely different from what we had started off with. So I feel to understand what offering you are giving to the customer or what the customer is seeking from you, if you realize that early in your entrepreneurial venture, that's good. You can expand a lot better, and maybe the process will be slow, but the end result will be good. So by around till 2000, 2001, it was very exciting in terms of creating new products, new services, etc., etc., etc. And somewhere around 2001, 2002, we grew to a certain size. And at that time, I started feeling that I'm not creating anything new. I'm becoming more of an administrator. Well, that was my fault. Entrepreneurs should not think like that, because you got to manage your business also properly. So once we reached a certain scale, I kind of personally started feeling that I'm going away from that core creator or creative phase of creating machines, new designs, etc. And I'm becoming more of an administrator of the business. At which time I think I started losing a little interest in kind of getting on with it. And it took me about 3 years to find some investors to cash out my equity, etc. We had some joint ventures also with some companies. And so basically I would say that the pivot was when I started feeling that I am no longer the creator and I'm kind of degenerating into an administrator of business. That was my trigger of getting bored with it, or whatever you call it, and moving out of it 3 years later in 2005. And then yoga was something that I used to follow. And when I came out of my business in 2005, when I completely came out of it, I just took a year off and explored various places which taught yoga or which dealt with yoga at a scientific level. Scientific level means without any religious mumbo jumbo.
Right.
I found 3 places, which is one is Bihar School of Yoga in Jharkhand now and Bihar then, Kaivalya Dham near Lonavala, and the third one was Swami Vivekananda Yoga Anusandhan Sansthanam at Bangalore. I found these 3 locations which dealt with it at a scientific level. So, and I think that has also helped get a lot of clarity of thought, etc. Yoga is a very powerful science behind it. Yeah, so that's how it was.
Great. So I think 2 takeaways from here. One would be that it's the problem before the product and the process. Because once you find a solution to what is the client's problem that you're trying to, figure a way out and find a solution to that, I think that comes first. Am I right?
Yes, I mean, yes, user first at all times. I don't need to talk about that in a design school, right? You guys will be so much more user-centric than I am.
Right. And second was, of course, that at the core, you're actually a product guy. And creating something, and of course you started from, let's say, A and you moved on to almost, let's say, STUV by the time maybe 15 years down the line, but eventually it was all about evolution. But at the core you are a creator, a product guy.
Yeah, kind of, I would say. I mean, I like to see the ideas coming into action. Something that you ideated on, going to the execution phase, that's something which is interesting. And
Sure, thank you. So we have a question from Ria. She says there's a concept of chronos, which is prioritization, scheduling, etc., and kairos, which is aha moments, flow state. So can methods be applied in design thinking to innovate around this?
Well, honestly, I don't know what you talk about, concept of chronos and kairos, aha moments, flow state. Well, but see, let's keep it simple. I would say keep the user at the center at all times and try to understand that user from all perspectives. Flow state automatically comes when you're really immersed in that, immersed in the problem, immersed in that surrounding. I think that flow state automatically comes. And once you are in that flow state, a lot of aha moments definitely come. But it is all being in that immersion phase for a long time, which leads to the flow and which leads to the aha moments, is what I would say from whatever little experience I have in product to service design, or whatever you call it.
Sure, thank you.
That would be.
Right, would you like to add to that, or do we move to the next one?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sure. So Archana would like to know that how do you promote design thinking to businesses and governments where people may be familiar with the idea but don't know what it entails?
Well, if I were to say, what is the difference between design thinking and the other modes of other approaches to problem solving? I think it is the high emphasis on empathy, right? Rest of it is kind of followed in other processes also, but the extreme focus on the user or the tools to understand or enhance one's empathy quotient, the tools that a designer uses to kind of unearth latent unarticulated needs is the big differentiation. And if you can demonstrate with the help of some tool technique to your client, whether it's a corporate or a government, if you can show some slight result at the beginning and they see value in it, I mean, they get converted for sure. In fact, this government now is talking a lot about design thinking and things like that. In fact, this entire Atal Innovation Mission, which they have launched in the last 4 or 5 years, I think it is showing a lot of results at the school level. May not be at the PG level, but at the school level, where they are setting up these tinkering labs, Atal tinkering labs. I see a lot of small kids, 7th, 8th, 9th standard kids creating a lot of real, what do you say, grassroots needed products needed at the grassroots. And I think when these kids come into colleges, that's where we might see some startup ventures, etc., coming up. So I would say another 3 to 4 years, this real initiative of embedding design thinking through the MHRD at the school level, etc., will start showing results. But coming to your point, how do you get these people onto your side? That high emphasis on that empathy quotient and demonstrating to them at a small level how the whole problem which you thought earlier, and after having delved a little deeper, how the problem definition got changed. If you can convince your client in the beginning, I think they would go for it. And I would say from my experience, 70% of the clients immediately go for it. Maybe there are still 30% who don't, for whatever reasons. But that's the case in every business. You can't convince 100% people 100% of the time.
Sure, thank you. So in line with your earlier statement about putting users first.
Yeah.
Again, decades ago, we had Henry Ford who said, if we go to users, they would tell us that they needed faster horses.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah.
So
maybe
90% of the times where I go for a talk, and when I say user first, technology later, I get this question. I get this.
Right.
So my take on this is very simple. Back then, people wanted a faster means of communication. All right. Faster means of mobility. What was the frame of reference of mobility of a customer on the streets? It was a horse. So they would have obviously said they would need faster horses. But Henry Ford identified that the need was faster movement, and he connected the dot with the internal combustion engine, which was an evolving technology at that time, and actually productized that internal combustion engine into a vehicle, which he made it through the assembly line. He made it so cheap that people could afford to buy a Model T, right? So did Henry Ford ask users? No, he did not ask users. But he was intuitive enough to understand that the need of the consumer is faster mobility. And I have a technology, if I can productize that technology, I can make mobility faster for consumers. So would you say that Henry Ford did not understand users? Did he push his own invention onto people? Where did that invention come out from? From his understanding that people need faster mobility, and there exists a technology, but there does not exist a means for the people to access that technology. And he made it possible through his whole technique of assembly line and creating the product cheaper and making it affordable. So that's the innovation that he kind of created, so to say. So do you say that he did not understand what users needed? Maybe he didn't go out and ask users, but intuitively understood. Similar things are said about Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs has famously said, I give a damn about user research. Yes, he's also said the same. But that guy was so perceptive to understand how users would interact with products is something that he had probably developed the knack himself right from his college days till he created all those products. And if you really see technology patents, Apple stands nowhere as compared to Samsung. But what does Apple differentiate in? User experience. So simplifying technology is Apple's forte, and that cannot happen without user understanding. Maybe they don't conduct user research in a very conventional manner, but these guys spend enough time to understand users. Steve Jobs, probably an exception, because the guy must have been extremely observant, intuitive, perceptive, whatever you call it, and was able to connect the dots in his mind and imagine what the customer would need. So what the customer needs is obviously the beginning of any business, right? Let me take another example. Say, for example, in the 1960s or 70s, when as kids, say 10, 15, 20-year-old kids, if you stayed out of the house beyond 8:30 in the night, would your parents not be worried about where you were? And would they not feel the need to communicate to you at 9 o'clock in the night, even if you were out of the house? But did they have a means to communicate? Because there were no mobile phones. But Motorola somewhere understood this unarticulated or latent need and created a product from the wireless technology that they already had for decades. So do you say that they did not understand users? So sometimes it is a question of making 2 + 2 = 7 without doing conventional user research. But understanding the user is extremely important, right?
Fantastic. So great. I think that answers the user first scenario used again decades ago as well. We've got Trisha wanting to know that should an entrepreneur stick to his roots and reason for starting the design firm, or shift its core business because of a shift in the market in order to keep it up with the trend? This is the last question that we'll be taking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stick to his roots and reason for starting the design firm. See, there are certain things that you are passionate about and you want to do them. Great. There is no right or wrong answer in this. There will be situations where your passion leads to a lot of good things, yes. And there might be other instances where you're passionate about something X, Y, Z, but there is no market demand. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, you got to keep a balance between the two. Market demand as well as pursuit of your passion. And treating them as mutually exclusive is like living in a binary world. The world is not binary, right? It's not black or white. There is always a gray continuum between black and white, and one has to find your sweet spot along that continuum. And as an entrepreneur, yes, you have to be definitely alive to the market needs. And sometimes there might be a compromise on the passion, etc. might happen. So it's a double-edged sword.
So true. So for more questions, do reach out to us offline on LinkedIn. A round of thanks to our participants for joining us today, and a special thanks to Dr. Kaustubh for his time and the value-add takeaways from his journey. We encourage you to connect with us via our social channels to know more about the MIT ID Innovation Program and upcoming webinars and online courses. I'd also like to invite you all to our next webinar on Friday, 26 June. Our guest speaker is Mr. Arun Khattar, founder and CEO of Vendikin Technologies Private Limited. He is a former international tennis player as well. He will be speaking about driving innovation in the unmanned, touchless retail space. Please register in case you haven't yet. And for those interested in enrolling for the one-year course, we have last few seats left for the second cohort of this prestigious program that will fast-track your career path. So log on to www.mitidinnovation.com to kickstart your innovation journey with a diverse set of co-innovators. Thank you once again, Dr. Kaustubh. And everyone, stay connected, stay safe, and keep innovating every day. Thank you.
Check out the book. You might find some.
Positively.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.